All right, folks, as part of our Jeff Beck Remembered show, I reached out to people that have the essence of purity in their playing, in their style, in their intention, like Jeff. And our next guest is one of those people. And I thought that he'd be a perfect person for us to talk to regarding Jeff. And please welcome back to Guitar Radio Show and our Jeff Beck Remembered show, Mr. Philip Sayce. How are you, Philip?
Oh, Mark, I'm really touched by that introduction. Thank you so much. And Mark, it's a real honor to be with you here today to discuss the master, Mr. Jeff Beck. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Do you remember the very first time do you recollect that you heard Jeff Beck?
Totally. Yeah. I'm glad you asked. So, growing up in the, as a kid of the sort of 80s and 90s, kind of came up in that era and thankful for that because it was a great time. And my dad recorded this show that was on, I grew up in Toronto in Canada, and it was a show that was called Much Music. It was like the Canadian MTV. Mm-hmm. And they had a show on that was called Guitar Heroes. And my dad recorded it on a VHS tape. And, my dad really my mom and dad hipped me to all of my guitar heroes and music heroes, and Jeff Beck certainly being one of them. And on this show, it was, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eddie Van Halen. I mean, it was like these heavy Clapton, Santana, and Jeff Beck. And the selection they picked for Jeff Beck was a song called, I'm Just Ambitious. You know that tune?
Sure do. Yeah.
And it's like, as a child, hearing the guitar playing in that, it freaked me out. It scared the shit out of me because I didn't really understand guitar. I wasn't playing at that time, but I also, through my dad making it very clear that, these are the heavyweights right here. We're talking about Jeff Beck and Clapton and the amazing players I just mentioned. And that Jeff Beck one, obviously as I'm, an adult now, I understand that the video was actually somewhat comical and meant to be funny. But Jeff Beck's playing in that left a big impression on me. And it was like, what the hell is going on here? Like that stayed with me. And certainly as I got a little older, was introduced to some of his other, his earlier works and also later works. But that was the first time I think I was introduced to Jeff Beck was through this program. And it sounded like a house burning down, man. It was just, a lot of tricks going on there, man. It's just wild.
Yeah, I think he was always trying to keep us guessing, Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that was actually a real intention, but it ended up being that way. That was the end result. Always leaving us kind of scratching our heads, us mere mortals scratching our heads going, all right, now how in the world did that happen?
Yeah. Hey, that's not fair.
Exactly.
What? I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think a constant and always scratching our heads like, wow, that's never going to happen again. What was that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just magic.
Yeah. Is there for you, definitive record that you can think of for that stands out in your mind as the record, that your go-to record when you want to hear Jeff?
I think like many other people, I would probably land on Wired, Blow by Blow in that era. Mm-hmm. But there is one particular track that for me is like, for when I hear it, I feel like if like the aliens hear it, like this is something that will travel across space and time for eternity. And that's from Guitar Shop, and it's the Where Were You? And I just listened to it actually the other day. I called Alexa up, Alexa, play, and it came on and, just kind of sitting there. And I think with the awareness of Jeff's recent transition, I felt my lip trembling there. I felt the golf ball rising in the throat. And I just listened to this angel because to me, it just reminds me of, how delicate the playing is. And at the same time, it's just extraordinary to me. I've never heard another guitar piece, anything remotely like that. Different, mm-hmm. Totally different and unique to all the other, true masters of the instrument. But that is, to me, that's like I feel like in 1,000 years from now, people might hear that and still, as you said earlier, be scratching their heads going like, wow, it's like there's breath in the way he's, sounds like yeah, I can't find the words actually, Mark. It's, so when we say record, full album, I think the two that I mentioned, but that particular piece, I remember hearing that in the car with my dad and just the silence when the song ends. It's sort of like, who's going to speak first? Like, it's just, there's nothing to be said after that piece. And so, that I'm getting a little verklempt thinking about it right now. Just the weight and beauty of that.
And it was like that too when he performed it live. There were those moments, when he would perform that song and it would end, and the audience, and most of the times, and I saw Jeff a lot, and most of the times, the audience would allow. They were smart enough to know to allow for that moment, that breath, like you said, at the end, for everyone to kind of stop and say, "Wow, that just happened. Okay, now let's applaud."
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like who dares make a sound after that?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? Like, wow.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was talking to Andy Timmons earlier today, and we were talking about the purity of intent and intention in his playing, and how there was this incredible honesty that came across when he played, that I think that was part of the reason that he was so special to so many people. Somebody recently said, he's your favorite guitarist's favorite guitarist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of true. I don't know who coined that phrase. I'd love to know who coined the phrase, because it's really very true. And another quote that I recently saw on YouTube, which I thought was beautiful, was guitar playing is not a competition, but Jeff Beck won.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of it, right? And I believe his contemporaries, I think, all take their hats off to him. Mm-hmm. They all agree. I think all the ones that were there, they were. Yeah.
Did you ever get to see him play live?
I did. Yeah. I remember seeing him in Toronto on the tour. I don't know actually how long Jennifer Batten was playing with him, but it was in that era. Mm-hmm. And, what do you say? It's in a way like, are you experienced? It's like once you go see Jeff Beck, it's like you've been baptized, or you're experienced in some way at that point. And, it reminds me in some ways of a giant in sport, where you have all of these different athletes in their field that are exceptional, that all the other players look up to. But then there are one or two, or maybe a handful, and a lot of times I refer to this handful as like the top shelf, where they all reside and there is no competition there because they're all so unique and beautiful in their own way. But I do recall that it was being in the presence of greatness, and being in the presence of I want to choose my words just carefully here, because it's hard to find the words to describe my personal experience of what it felt like in listening to Jeff Beck and being in the presence of whatever energy he was receiving and then transmitting out in this venue where I saw him. And I guess in some ways it's almost like, this might be, I don't want to get too far out there, but if you're out in nature and so you're just walking in the woods and suddenly you see the most beautiful bird you've ever seen in your life, the colors, maybe it's purple or maybe it's red, maybe just like you've never seen a bird, and you stop in your tracks and you have to admire that bird for being 100% what it is. It's just absolutely 100% present. It is completely what it is on this earth to be. And I feel like Jeff, in that way, represents that bird I'm describing, where when he played, it felt 100% natural. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever heard or felt or seen in that moment. And almost in some ways, we were talking about the concept of breath. It took your breath away, but all at the same time, it gave me breath. And so that's sort of the best. It was so much a part of nature in a way, something that was so perfect. And in his playing, I don't hear licks. I hear something that might happen once. I mean, sure, he might be able to play it again, but these are moments. He's receiving something from the universe. And I think that's really, for me, oh, there's some birds flying by. I love it. There's a whole bunch of parrots just flew by. That was cool.
Fantastic.
But I want to say that, that's what I aspire to, is to like they say, like with Michael Jordan, let's be like Mike. Well, let's be like Jeff,
Yeah.
And I really feel that. I feel like just the purity and the realness of it. The comfortability in his own skin. I didn't know him personally, but that's what I feel when I hear him playing. And just that true beauty. And so I don't know if that really gets to the core of what you were asking there, but that's what was coming up for me around experiencing Jeff's spirit in his music.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely exactly what I was looking for sure. And I totally agree with you. Yeah, one of the last times I saw him was September 23rd of 22, and wow. It was one of those nights. It was the first night of the tour. He was opening for ZZ Top. They had a little bit of a sound difficulty in the very beginning, maybe 30 seconds into the first song. And then everything kind of just worked itself out. But then from that moment on, it was really strange in the sense that, not strange, I mean wonderfully strange, in the sense that it felt like he was tapping something from somewhere else. It was coming through him and out to us. And I remember the audience just kind of, at one point, they were all just looking and in astonishment. It wasn't like, like once ZZ Top comes on, everybody's dancing, having a good time, But it was one of those moments where it was like, hey, we all need to stop and pay attention to this.
Totally.
It demanded your attention, and not in an authoritative way, but in a beautiful artistic manner that was just captured you. And I've seen so many Jeff Beck shows, and yes, those moments always seem to happen somewhere in the show, but this seemed to happen throughout the show. So this was very, very different. It was honestly, I think it was probably some of the best playing I had ever seen him do. And to be at 78 years old and to still be on top of your game, whereas many of his contemporaries are not. They just aren't. And they would cop to that, I think.
Well, I was going to ask you that, Mark. I was going to ask you, if you feel, as certainly as somebody who has seen Jeff Beck that many times, that you're that deep in your love for Jeff, I was going to ask you, did you feel like he was at his peak at this point, at this point in his life? Like, did he just keep getting better and more evolved and just expanding? And I think that's what I heard you just say, that he did that. And I think that, age, like whether it's a God-gifted athlete or, an artist or musician, I mean, age can play a part, maybe the dexterity changes or, different things happen along the road there. And it seems as though Jeff just continued to get better somehow. I mean, we're all learning, right, in life. Like, we all learn. That's the intention, is to grow as people, students of life. At least I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me, that's my goal. And I think to hear that somebody at that point in their life, who also physically was so, still very, like very animated and wearing the like cut off T-shirt, looking strong and looking, like it's almost like he was ageless in a way, which is a really beautiful quality. But I think to hear you say that a man in his late 70s able to play at this peak, at this level that just kept getting higher and higher and higher. It's a reminder of how tragic, in some ways, his really sudden passing was, because he had a lot of gas left in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels very tragic in that way. And in some ways, I guess we can also look at it like, well, he gave us so much beauty in this earth in the time he was here, and he graduated.
Yes,
he's graduated to the next world. And,
yeah.
And we get to marvel at the watermark that he left. And, in many ways, it comes to mind when I think of Stevie Ray Vaughan, who I didn't get to see live, but who obviously left us in a very sudden and tragic way, and at a very young age. And, the connection that both Stevie and Jeff Beck had on, during the times when they got together to play, very different stylists and artists, but also people that seem to be expanding their gift every day as they went forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I was thinking about talking about his growth and his growth, and I saw this happening with Stevie too towards the end. There was these moments of exponential growth. Like, when I heard the Instep record from Stevie, I always looked at Riviera Paradise as the track that was basically letting us know, hey, get ready. Things are going to change. We're getting ready to, I'm getting ready to go to another place now. And I think had he survived, I think musically there would have been some major changes, obviously not losing what he was about, not losing his essence, because Stevie had a very strong essence, obviously. Here it is. How many years is it now? It's almost 40 years since he's gone. Something like
Unbelievable.
that. And he still has such a strong impact, and I believe that Jeff will also continue to always have that impact on us and future generations. But there's that exponential growth. And, with Jeff, I think you can draw a line all the way back to the Yardbirds to right even up to the 18 record, where there were changes. There were always changes along the way. And this growth and this way of, like I said earlier, making mere mortals just scratch their head and go, what the heck was that?
Yeah, cry. You just stand there and you're just crying.
Yeah,
you didn't even know you were crying.
Yeah,
you're just crying.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. I was telling Andy Timmons earlier today. I saw him the first time I ever saw him do Little Wing. He did it in such a manner, and thank goodness I have a recording of it. He did it in such a way that I sobbed. I did, and it just hit me a certain way. And my wife was sitting next to me, and she looked and she goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "This was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." I said, "The show could end now, and that would be okay." And of course, it didn't.
Oh. But isn't that what this, like? That's what it's about. That gift that he was able. Certainly the virtuosity of the player, but the soul that he could hit you with that, and bring people to their knees crying like that. And that's something that is so healing and such a gift. And I think, that's the eternal gift that he's also given us, is that you can transport back to that moment and what you were feeling and get goosebumps now, I can imagine. And it's funny you mentioned the Hendrix song that he, Little Wing, because I just want to share this. One of my favorite moments for me is the duet that he did with Seal of Manic Depression. And I remember hearing that, and I still love that recording, that performance, the ferocity in that. And I think you were also, at the beginning of our conversation here, you were mentioning, what's one of the first times you remember being introduced to Jeff Beck. And I should also add to that my parents, they grew up in London. They were there in the 60s and saw all this shit happening. I think I think my mom used to like know some of the cats in the Yardbirds. I'm not sure, but like she was on the scene. Like, she saw the people, like she would see Eric Clapton at the same parties. They're about the same age. And so she had those like front row to all of this stuff. And my parents were like, yeah, you ever see Blow Up?
Oh,
and that scene where Jeff Beck is just like that ferocity, what happens when he smashes the guitar. But you know what I mean? Like the energy of that is eternal for me as far as I'm concerned. I think it's such a wide scope of him being able to be that vicious, right? That in that moment there where when you watch it, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy's powerful. But then, as we said, to be able to play have the most luxurious moments that can bring us to tears. And it's just, what a wide scope.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, it's hard to find the words. I feel like we're just chatting mutually about someone that changed the world for so many ways and made it so much better for all of us. And, yeah, man. I mean, it's emotional actually talking about it. It's really, it's heavy. It's really.
It is. It's funny. Jim Campolongo said that he could be tender one moment and then do muscly bends the next.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, yeah. How can you be that strong and that tender all in?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Shocking.
Yeah, and I think that came from everything he listened to in the past. And I mean, I've read so much about him. He said that when the punk movement came to the UK, he said he was so pleased. He said, "This finally, there's something different. Finally, there's something to get pissed off about." And he really kind of tapped into that mentality. And there were moments, certain tunes that you can hear, Big Block is one of those tracks from the Guitar Shop record. That's that's a heavy tune.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like the most beautiful brush strokes, and then just like absolutely sawing the canvas in half. He had all of the abilities. Right. And I mean, again, that's the high watermark that we get to look up at and marvel. Yeah. Marvel at. Yeah. And it's it's kind of, and it's been such a strange time too. Obviously with David Crosby passing shortly thereafter, and Christine McVie not long ago, like these really, really huge pillars of this, of music that are transitioning at this time. And with Jeff, it came as such a shock, maybe because there's sort of a sense like, oh yeah, well that's the dude, that's the man, he's going to be there. And when you see him, he's so vibrant and again, very fit looking, and is playing at the, I think as you were sharing, at the pinnacle, and just seems so that was not, you just wasn't even thinking of that, so it just really kind of came out of left field. And I think it's going to take some time for, again, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think for so many of us in this community that revere him and love him and his gift that he gave us, it's going to take some time to process. Oh yeah, for sure. I have some people that I invited to do this who just weren't ready to do it. Band members, and songwriting partners that I spoke to, they just weren't ready to do this. They just makes sense. Well, yeah, I mean, I totally understood, and I told them, I said, look, my state of denial is palpable, regarding this situation, and the first 48 hours, I wouldn't dare listen to any of the music. I tried only a few hours after I got the news, and I just couldn't do it. My heart started pounding. I was like, wow. It was at that moment, I always knew how important he was to me, but it was at that moment I realized the true effect that he had on my life.
and what how it really had impacted me all the way back to the time I was 12 years old, and being now 61. That's a long time,
That's a lifetime.
Yeah, it's a lifetime of appreciation and marvelment, to be perfectly honest. It's just, and it's just, and it's just, he honestly, he showered us with gifts, and that's what I'm concentrating on, the gifts. And that's why I wanted to do this.
And it's just so beautiful that that you're doing this to honor this, incomparable artist, magical soul, to share that love into the world and into the universe. And, wherever Jeff is now, he can feel this. He knows. He's feeling it from you. And hopefully me and everybody that's contributing. And but his music is so real that it's got to go to the next level, man. I mean, the next world.
Yeah.
He's there.
Yeah.
And, I want to ask you as well, like, since you asked me, what was your introduction to Jeff? Since you said, when you said you were 12 years old when you first heard him, what was it?
I actually say this in the very beginning of the show when I was.
Oh, okay.
No, fine. I love talking about it. It's a funny story. You couldn't script it. It's like something that came out of like. Oh goodness, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High moment. It was I was at a friend's house, and he had an older uncle who lived in the house with him. We were 12, and the uncle was 17, and he lived in the house. And I heard this music coming from another room, and I didn't know what it was. It was Lead Boots playing, and I looked at my friend. I went, "What is that?" He goes, "I don't know. Something Tommy's playing." So I went and I banged on the door, and there's smoke coming out from under the door, pot smoke coming out from under the door, and I'm banging on the door, and I hear the needle come off the record, and Tommy goes, "What?" I go, "Tommy, what is that?" He goes, "Hang on," and I hear him taking the record off of the turntable. And then the door opens, and a giant plume of pot smoke hits me in the face. And out of that plume of smoke comes a copy of Wired. And he hands it to me, and he goes, "Go home, make a cassette, bring it back. You scratch it, you're dead."
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I didn't even drive my bike home. I walked it home. I made the copy because I was afraid I'd fall with it and Tommy would beat me up. I made the copy, brought it back home, brought it back to Tommy. I said thank you. I went back to the house and I listened to it over and over. And then the next day I drove my bike down to the record store and bought myself a copy.
Oh, it's an awesome story. I mean, so he is this individual. I don't know if you still know them or not, but I mean, they basically handed you the keys to the universe. Like, here you go. This is going to open up your entire mind. This is go get them.
And that same month, Aerosmith's Rocks came out. So he did the same thing with that. So
that was a big year.
It was a big year. 76 was an amazing year for really good guitar playing, rock and roll. Guitar rock was king in 1976. And as it would become king again in the 80s, with everything that came out of LA, that was huge. So, I mean, that was a big moment for me. It was a big moment. And then, of course,
thanks for sharing.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah. From that point on, then I started to go back. I was like, okay, so who is this guy? And I went off to the record stores and I would ask the older guys who were working at the record stores, like, tell me about this guy. What's the deal? And they're like, well, here's the records you need to buy. And so I went and I bought them and just continued to go down the rabbit hole and tried to find. And it was interesting because you remember Circus magazine?
Yes.
Yeah. So later that month, Jeff was on the cover of Circus, I think, to talk about it was either the Wired record or the Live with Jan Hammer thing that was going to be happening. And So there it was. I had him on the cover of a magazine that I read regularly. I was like, okay, here we go. Let's investigate.
So it just kind of all landed in your lap in some ways. It just kind of came to you.
It was the universe provided.
It was yes, the universe provided. It was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story, like, and how vivid it is. I mean, the way you describe it, it's like, you can see that.
Oh yeah. I every time I hear Lead Boots, I see it. I see it happening again.
I love it, man. That's yeah. But that's and that's the power of music, and these moments that live with us forever. It's not something that is, you can't plan it. You can't put that you can't sort of force feed that moment. And I think, again, speaking to the magic of Jeff, like, just, he was a beautiful vehicle to bring those moments to us from a higher power. Mm-hmm. And, obviously developing this extraordinary voice on the instrument that is, that's I mean, obviously, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said a million times before, but it's just unlike anything else. And again, just to go back to that sort of image of, if you're in nature and you see something that is just stops you in your tracks. Mm-hmm. That's really, for me, like the kind of best, sort of best comparison in a way. It's like, I've never seen anything like that before. Mm-hmm. And you just marvel, and there's a higher power because of that moment, and because of this beautiful creature being exactly who they were sent here to be.
Yep. That's perfect. That's a perfect way to end this. Philip, thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for doing it, man. And, I can kind of feel like the weight of this, it's really not possible to try to capture it all in words. But I really feel, Mark, like, as we're talking, a connection with you and the admiration for this human being, and it's really nice to share that energy, in these moments with you, because it I don't know if we're still recording or not, so yes, just cut me off or whatever. But no, I really feel like I don't know. I just sort of feel like this is like, times change, the world changes, everything is moving, but this just feels like a big one. It feels like. Ooh, yeah. And not to say that what's here and what's coming isn't good, and it won't be like that.
No, it won't. But you know what? I've come to terms with the idea of, okay, a world without Jeff Beck. Okay, that's going to be hard, because there won't be any more of that exponential innovation that we used to see. But One, we have everything he gave us, and two, now we are expected to continue to create. Now it's up to us to create in the way that we do, and reach as many souls as possible.
Oh, well said. I mean, that is it. And if anyone showed us, like, this is how it's done, it's Mr. Jeff Beck. Absolutely. So we got work to do.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I believe there was a Jeff Beck track called "Get Working."
So yeah, get to it.
Get working, y'all.
And exactly, and refer back to the handbook. Like, he's the handbook.
He's the handbook. That's right.
So don't expect that you're going to be able to do this, but here's the direction to go in. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. I keep thinking of the. I think it was Cyril Neville that wrote the song "Six Strings Down" about Stevie's passing, and that line that always sticks in my head is, "See the voodoo child holding out his hand. Been waiting on your brother. Welcome to the band."
Welcome to the band. I mean, how gorgeous is that?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, that song will. That'll give you goosebumps and tears. And, I also I should mention, I never really got to talk to Jeff Healey about it. Or I can't remember, but I know that Jeff Healey was so when Jeff Beck and Stevie Ray Vaughan did their tour, Jeff Healey was on the bill in Toronto. And so I guess I think of the three of them now at this point, and being certainly for me three, big inspirations and people that I respect so much. And what you just shared, welcome to the band. I could hear the three of those guys letting it rip, each in their own unique ways.
Oh,
but
can you believe?
what a night that must have been.
Oh, the beautiful noise.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you for spending some time with us today. I appreciate it.
Mark, it's a privilege and an honor to be here to chat about Mr. Beck with you.
Thank you.